In this chapter, we focus on plant structures. Since we ended our discussion of animals by looking at how climate change affected their migration, we introduce a different sort of migration phenomenon with plants, that some tree populations tend to occupy higher elevations than they used to. Since trees can't pick up and move, they must migrate from one generation to the next. And so that brings us to how do plant reproductive structures make that uphill journey possible? So you can tell that we're focusing in on the cross-cutting concept of structure and function. We want to help our students use this idea as a template for thinking, where they are looking at certain functions that an organism has and wondering what structures enable that to happen, which helps us really see that structure and function is just a special case of cause and effect. Without the structure, there'd be no function, just like without the cause, there'd be no effect. And for both cross-cutting concepts, we sometimes see the cause and wonder what the effect will be, and other times we see the effect, the function, and wonder what structure might be causing that, allowing it to happen. Let's look at the structure and function relationships that we're examining in this chapter. In Lesson 11, students begin by reviewing and discussing the unit roadmap. We then introduce the tree migration phenomenon. So there's an effect. What plant structures are enabling that? Students participate in an interactive presentation, the Plant Structures Part 1, and then they research one specific plant species. They get to choose any plant, preferably from a city that they previously adopted to study. And they wonder what structures help it reproduce, and how exactly do those structures help it. The Plant Structures Worksheet guides them in coming up with a claim statement about their plant structure, and they report their progress in an exit ticket. In this lesson, students get to conduct a series of experiments that help them understand plant structures and how they help them reproduce, the role that probability plays, and other factors that could affect a plant's chance for reproduction. The seed dispersal experiment handout guides them. Then students discuss what they learned from their experiments. And finally, students turn in their science notebook with the data collection and visual display that they completed during the lesson. And there's a rubric available for grading. In the next lesson, students begin class by placing Velcro on the tips of their shoes, and they walk around the classroom where there are cotton ball wisps placed everywhere. To illustrate how this process relates to plants, students participate in the Hitching a Ride presentation and the discussion. It helps them answer the question, how can animals help plants reproduce? Next, students make a 3-panel cartoon strip to show how an animal helps a plant spread and reproduce. There's the template and an example to help them. Finally, we return to the cotton balls that are stuck on their shoes and help them explain how similar systems with plant parts and animal fur increase the probability that plants will reproduce and migrate to places that they can survive. In Lesson 14, students return to the claim that they previously made about a plant's structures. And using the data they've collected over the last few lessons, students are able to complete a plant action poster using the plant action sample poster as a template. Students use most of the class period to complete their poster, and they self-assess using the CER rubric to help them improve their argument. In the next lesson, students share their mini poster CER analysis in small groups, and after sharing, they reflect on what they learned about plants during this series of lessons. Then students revisit the phenomenon that some tree species are migrating up the slopes of mountains, and they participate in a small group discussion on how their new understanding can explain this phenomenon. They also discuss what they can do to help these tree species survive. Up next, factors affecting growth.